Hi, and welcome to the sixth and last of my podcasts, COVID-19 Surviving Isolation. The title of this final podcast is Hope. My name is Paul Thorne. Over the past 6 weeks, I've tried to offer an anecdotal and philosophical take on isolation, and it's been based on my own personal experience of being isolated in hospital for 3 months after contracting a multi-drug resistant strain of tuberculosis, otherwise known as MDR-TB. I'm going to attempt to pull together the main themes from the previous episodes and present a summary, if you like, and also to share my thoughts on how we can use this time in lockdown for not only effective change to our inner world, but also some final thoughts on the way forward and how COVID-19 may be presenting us with an opportunity for real change in the world that we live in. In episode 1, I spoke about fear. My biggest regret, having been HIV positive for over 30 years, was that I spent the early years, my 20s, what should have been the best years really of my adult life, living in fear. I have absolutely no intention of doing that again with COVID-19, and this is a conscious choice that I have made. I mentioned in the first episode that 1.5 million people die of TB a year, and yet this is acceptable to us. COVID-19 has killed nowhere near as many, and certainly if you were to add up all of the numbers over time, probably never will. Familiarity of risks breeds contempt, if you like, a bit like crossing the road. It's a newness of the threat that causes that fear, and much of it is because it's unknown. Fear isn't tangible, it exists within us. It's very easy to project into a future that hasn't happened yet. And when we do this, we're not in the moment. We're not existing in today, but a future. Often a worst case scenario if your head is anything like mine that we've dreamt up. The way to deal with this is to open up about your fears to somebody else. When we don't externalise what is going on within our own heads, then we may not be aware that our thinking is getting a little bit skewed and maybe a bit out of control, and it can have a very negative impact on our emotional and mental health. If you can't talk to somebody else, then this is a little trick that I've learned, and it helps me to tell whether I'm projecting into a future that hasn't happened yet. And I ask myself, where are my feet? Well, my feet right now, they're here. Everything right now in this moment is okay. It's when I project into a future of what may or may not happen that fear is generated. If I can bring it back to where my feet are, more often than not, things are all right. In episode 2, I spoke about the importance of having some structure to your day and routine. Look, here's what I do. It's very, very simple. I get up, I have some medication that I can take, I do my washing up from the day before, I get showered and dressed. Then I actually sit down and I make a list of things that I can do. These very often are little jobs around the house or maybe work related, or I also put time in there for actually relaxation, taking time out for myself. I write these things down. I also write down when I should be eating as well, because sometimes I forget to eat. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I do. I forget to eat, and I wonder why I'm feeling a bit grouchy or whatever, and it's because I'm hungry or I've drunk too much coffee. This is another way of just taking a spot check of what's going on in the moment. As I've said on many occasions before, I am a big one of keeping notes, and actually, I recommend this to you. Maybe you want to start a journal, or you'll find a diary useful. For me, it was a vital tool whilst I was in hospital isolation. Maybe there's a writer in you there somewhere, and this is a time to explore that. In episode 3, I spoke about choices, and by this I meant, who do you choose to be in the COVID-19 crisis? Do you want to approach it from a kind of poor me, victimhood kind of role, or are you going to say, okay, this is the situation that we find ourselves in, I'm going to have to make the best of it? Will you choose to make the best use of this time? You can choose your mindset as well. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a direction that you consciously choose to go in. This isn't going to be a constantly positive mindset, because I think that's just impossible for any of us, and actually we're setting ourselves up for a fall if we think we can. There's no failure, it's just a direction that we're going in, that we say, I am going to try and approach this in the best possible way that I can. So what will you choose to do in lockdown? How can you take back some control of this situation that we find ourselves in? Time is the most valuable commodity that any of us have. How will you choose to use it? Don't waste it. In episode 4, called Chrysalis, I described 3 exercises. The first was how to conduct a review of your life, and the second was about the choices that we make, and how, if any, now is a good time to make changes to your life. The third exercise was about the important subject of gratitude and recognising the good things that we have in our lives and taking time to acknowledge them. In episode 5, I spoke about the things that we need versus the things that we want or think we want, and how to tell the difference between them. It's important that we've done the gratitude exercise, or at the very least thought about the things we can be grateful for in our own lives. I explained how we could use the exercises I described in episode 4 to come to a better understanding of our lives and open us up to opportunities and possibilities that do, trust me, still exist. As I mentioned at the beginning of this particular episode, it's called Hope. The main message of it is that COVID-19, however destructive it's been, the terrible toll that it's had and the lives that it's already taken and will take in the future, is also an opportunity for change in the world. And I truly believe that from chaos comes order. It might be controversial to say, but I imagine that the powers that be would rather us not have so much time to think about things. They may even see it as dangerous as the damage that's being done to the global economy. Maybe this is a time for a kind of consciousness rebellion. As we move through this pandemic, there are going to be opportunities for change, and we need to be ready for them. Okay, firstly, I have sometimes not found being in lockdown easy. And in spite of using the tools that I've described over these 6 podcasts, I've sometimes felt very down. I've felt very unmotivated, and on occasions I've even felt despair and defeated. There have been some times when I should have recorded this podcast and I just couldn't because I wasn't in the right mindset to do it. And I have not got this nailed, and what I do know is that the concepts and exercises that I have described have helped me. But I will not pretend to you that I'm 100% okay, because I'm not. And that's all right. It doesn't mean that I'm a failure. All I can do is the same as everybody else and try and take things in bite-sized chunks, one day at a time. Managing my fear, keeping a routine, making a choice about how I'm going to approach a day, even if it's just a direction. Putting the action in to take stock of where I'm at in this particular moment, acknowledging the things that I can be grateful for, all help. Ensuring that my needs are met, but putting my wants on hold, because particularly the things I'd like to do, activities like socialise, they have to wait. I have no control over that. What I have chosen to do is to look at the future with a degree of hope, and I fully intend to be open to the possibilities and opportunities that this lockdown and how we come out of it will bring. This is a mindset. It's something that I do have control over. I don't get it 100%, but it is a positive choice that I've made. So secondly, what's life going to look like afterwards? Well, clearly there's going to be a lot of social distancing. There's going to be this 2-meter rule, or 6 feet. Going out to bars and restaurants is going to be very different. We're a social species. This is going to be challenging for us, but clearly things are going to change. The thing is, if we accept that this change is going to happen, then we're in a better position to adapt to those changes. I truly believe that we are going to come out the other side of this, and there's no doubt that life will be different, but I'm prepared to step up to the plate and to make the best of it. If I have no control over the outside world, then at least I do have some control of what goes on within myself. I choose to approach the future with a sense of hope. Anyhow, as I've said before, there's no one size fits all. You may not agree with everything that you've heard in these podcasts, or maybe not even like. So I say to you again, take what you want and leave the rest. If I've given you cause to think, then even just a little bit, then I guess I've achieved what I set out to do. I really had no idea what these podcasts were going to look like at the very beginning, and it is an anecdotal and philosophical look at the situation that we find ourselves in. I don't have all of the answers, and you know what? That's okay. I shall only try and control the things that I can. So I say to you goodbye with these final words. It's a quote from President John F. Kennedy. His words are from a speech that he made on June 10th, 1963, shortly before his assassination. And his words are very poignant to now and the situation that we find ourselves in with COVID-19 today. And I used a quote on the last page of my book, Diary of a Modern Consumptive. Here's what he said. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal. Thanks very much for listening. All of my podcasts called COVID-19 Surviving Isolation can be found on my website, that's survivingisolation.com, on all major podcasting channels and also YouTube. I hope that they've given you cause to think. If you're interested in my personal story, my book Diary of a Modern Consumptive can be found on Amazon in print, as an ebook, and also as an audiobook. Remember, you're not alone. Be kind to yourselves.